Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to the show. Thank you guys so much for checking in, tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. We got a superstar up in the building, the lead attorney.
I appreciate it. Listen, thank you so much for the invite. I love the channel, I love what you're doing, and love the message that you are putting out. So many people, both men and women, kind of need a lot of help, a lot of direction. And so it's good when we can kind of give them a few tips or, some things to think about, some concepts, some ideas. Because, we all need help. No one really is very successful on their own. So it's good when we can all pitch in and let people know a little bit about our journeys or kind of where we're coming from, and maybe they can use that information in their own lives for maybe some improvement. So congratulations on the channel.
Well, I appreciate that. I definitely wanted to start this channel to help, particularly men, to kind of get along in life. And I had a lot of obstacles I had to overcome, a lot of mental hurdles that I had to overcome. And so I said to myself, I know if I got to overcome them, then other people are going to have to overcome them as well.
Yes.
So I started the channel, and the ladies hijacked it. They want to hear about relationship stuff and all that kind of stuff, which is good. I mean, that's all part of self improvement. A lot of people want to get in some place in life, and if they're standing in their own way, then let's address it. So,
100%.
um, yeah. So let's say hello to some people before we get into it. A fake human. I don't know what that's about. A fake human. He's got his notepad out there. A high
Awesome.
vibe. Hello to you. And she's always making sure people hit the chat there. Appreciate that. Out of sight, out of mind. Saying hello from North Carolina. Rhonda Payne saying good morning, Dr. Ellen, the lead attorney in chat. Hit the like button. She's very good about making sure people do that. Yoli is here.
Awesome.
Good day, Dr. Ellen Guest. Good day to be alive today. Well, that's definitely true. Yes, let's get the likes up. Everyone, please hit the
100%.
like button and just say hello so we can acknowledge you on your way in. And most importantly, hit the like button. So I would assume that everyone knows my special guest for today, the lead attorney. But if you would just take a few moments here and just kind of introduce yourself and tell us who you is and who you be and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm down here in Atlanta. I am an attorney. I've been an attorney, I guess, for about 25 years now. I'm retired. I got out of the practice. I just got fed up, and I started a YouTube channel to kind of help men learn some of the basic things that I knew from my experience as an attorney. But these basic things that men generally didn't know were kind of ruining their lives when I would see them in court or in my conference room with their divorce cases. So I started off kind of doing that type of content with child support stuff, divorce stuff. And then as we were kind of talking kind of behind the scenes, during that time, Kevin Samuels was really blowing up. And so Kevin and I started doing some content together along with other YouTubers, and just really trying to help people, both men and women, but at least from my channel, more specifically men, because the women don't really need a lot of help when it comes to divorce court. They got a lot of things supporting them. So it's kind of the men who are the underdogs. And
Yeah.
so so I started making a channel about that, and my content is kind of taking some twists and turns, but really this is my wheelhouse, and I do a lot of consults to this day. People call in um, about their situations, their problems, their cases. Also, I still do mediations, so I mediate divorce cases here in Georgia. So that's kind of what I got going on over here.
Very good, very good. One of the favorite clips that I was just kind of thinking as you were speaking. One of the favorite clips that I saw you on. There was a lady. I think she was like a preacher, a pastor of a church, and she had called in, and she was talking about how she thought that prison was unsuitable for women and was okay for me. You remember that one? That was
I don't know
absolutely
if I
crazy. She
remember
thought it
that
was
one.
she said it was okay for men to go to prison, but she didn't think that women should go to prison, and it was just absolutely nuts. But and you rightfully were digging into her like, this is crazy. What are you saying? It's okay for men to go to prison, So there's this idea that, men can take a little bit more. And I'm not saying that we can't, but that we deserve a little bit more. Or, you can send them to prison, send them to war, send them to the military, but us, we got to be, the ladies that sometimes have to be stoic.
Yeah, it's really a hard line to walk because I was on Twitter even just yesterday, and I saw this tweet. It was a quote by some, I guess, well-known guy on the Titanic that died, and his quote was, "Let it never be said that, I took a space from on a one of those little dinghy or life rafts from a woman. I'll dive, going down dressed, in my finest attire, but the women will survive." Well, what's the difference between him saying that and then a woman saying, women shouldn't go to jail? I
Mm,
mean, it's really a fine line because what you're saying in both of those is that women have a certain type of privilege.
mm,
Women shouldn't die if a man can die first, or women shouldn't go to prison, only the men. And of course, when you take it too far, it sounds absolutely ridiculous, like making a statement such as women shouldn't go to prison. But we were all brought up with the whole idea that men didn't hit women and you treated them with respect. And I don't really know where that really gets us. And you see now on the internet, I guess for maybe like the past 5 or 10 years, where men are like, hey, if you guys want equality, fine. We're going to treat you equal. And if you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. And we're just going to take gender out of it, which maybe is the kind of correct solution here. Because when we start talking about family law, we see this bias come up again, where you start talking about things like alimony and making sure that the woman lives in the lifestyle that she's become accustomed to and things of that nature. Men taking more of the hit on the finances, the assets, assuming more of the debt. And
mm.
so when we talk about gender inequality, we kind of get into kind of some deep waters because on the one hand, we do want to acknowledge that women are typically, shorter than us, weaker than us, and so it makes sense that a man would kind of be a little bit more reserved in how he interacts with a woman. But then giving the woman that privilege can be extended in some places where we never really wanted it to go. You start hearing things like believe all women, men being arrested and incarcerated for false allegations. So
Mm.
it kind of gets murky real quick.
Very good, very good. Yes, absolutely. It does get murky, and you're right about that. And we want to dig into that about this whole 50-50 conversation and equality conversation. Somebody's saying that your mic sounds a little distant. I don't know.
My
You
mic
sound
sounds
fine
just
to,
enough.
yeah, it sounds okay to me.
Uh,
I don't,
I don't know if that's a little better there. I don't know.
I don't know. All right, but you sound fine to me. Um, so you said you got a little tired of the legal work that you had to do. What I understand is that doing law work, legal work can be very taxing. Working on weekends, long hours, etc. Is that what you got tired of?
Um, Not necessarily that, but just the inequality of it. There are people who, when you see court hearings on TV and in movies, and you think it's one thing, and then when you show up, you get a totally different side. I see pills, potions, and poisons in the chat. She might know a little bit about that. When you go to court, you see how it is on a real basis, and you see the inequalities, you see the injustice, and you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And the answer is all the same, because if we're honest, your attorney really doesn't care about you. Your attorney doesn't know you. Your attorney doesn't know your kids. Pills, potions, and poisons will say, your attorney is at work and your attorney wants to do a good job. I have a doctor and she's amazing. And I feel like she really cares about me. And I know that she really wants to do a really good job for me. But I would be lying if I said, she really, really cared about me. She didn't even know my middle name, right? I'm one of hundreds of patients.
Mm,
And so when you're an attorney, you really want to do a good job, but you're in a weird position because you're fighting very hard for people, but you don't know them. And then it can come out a lot of times that the people that you're fighting for, sometimes they're really not great people. Sometimes you end up not liking them at all, but you're spending your time and your effort, your life to really fight for these people. And you look back after a number of years and you say, well, is this worth it? Why am I doing this? And the only reason that you're doing it, if we're honest, for let's say 95% of the attorneys out there, the only reason that you're doing it is for money. And so you say, well, I'm exchanging my time for money. Is this something that I want to keep doing? When you're 5 years out of law school, 10 years out of law school, you don't really think about stuff like this. But once you get 15, 20 years in, you start to connect the dots and you're like, I've made some money and I don't know if it's worth it anymore. So, on YouTube, a lot of men, they see the injustice in the legal field, not necessarily the legal field, let me say the family law system. But imagine working in that system every day for years. You just get fed up with it and you look back and you're like, well, why am I doing this? And if the answer is just for money, then it's time to get out. If you really love doing family law or workers' comp or personal injury, criminal, then, some people have a calling for that and they should absolutely be there. But if you're just doing it for the money, a lot of times attorneys, we get in and we see what it's about and then we try to find something else.
Mm. From your time in there, we often hear that the family law is definitely against men. As one who worked in that system, do you echo that sentiment that is definitely against men? And if it is, what should be done about it?
Mm, it is against men. It's getting a lot better. Certainly, it kind of I don't know. It's like a pendulum because you can go far back into let's say family law, and it was okay to beat your wife and it was okay to violate your wife. So you could say, well, back then, the laws were for men. And
Mm.
then so the pendulum starts swinging to even things out, and then the pendulum swings too far. And so now you have men just, really getting railroaded and losing all the things they've worked for, decades. And they're older when the divorce occurs, and there's really no time to get that stuff back. So they're just kind of financially crippled, maybe for life. And especially in regards to their children, men not getting a proper amount of visitation, men not getting a proper amount of custody of their own kids. So, you get a really unfair advantage towards the women. But now it's kind of started coming back. We got a lot of states, including here in Georgia, that say, okay, we're going to do 50-50 starting off maybe, or at least we're not going to look at the gender of the parents. We're going to say that both parents more or less deserve an equal time. I don't want to say that Georgia's doing 50-50, but certainly Atlanta is really trying on a, let's say, off the books basis. The judges are really trying to start, okay, well, let's see if this is possible. And I think Kentucky has come out and said that they're going to be a 50-50 type of state. And that has had effects on divorce, where now the women aren't divorcing the men so much. They're not really trying to cash the men out because they know if the man gets 50-50, then generally there's going to be either no child support or reduced amount of child support. So that is decreasing the incentive for women to break up these marriages. So it's starting to come back around. But even still, generally speaking, I would say that there is some advantage that women have. Now, it's not just biological that these women have the advantage in terms of being a woman, but it's also that many times women typically make less than men. Now, I don't want to get into the gender gap, argument, because there's a lot of arguments or a lot of, let's say, reasons why people kind of debunk that myth. But generally speaking, if a man and a woman are together, a woman is typically going to choose a man that makes a little bit more than her. So when the divorce occurs, naturally, you're going to have a woman who's making less than the man. You don't really see a ton of relationships where the woman is making significantly more than the men. There are a lot of women making a lot of money, but those women making money choose men that are making even more money typically. So a lot of the injustice comes from the fact that men are the breadwinners. And so you have things like an inordinate amount of child support or an unjust amount of spousal support. So, in general, yes, I would say that the family law system is tilted in favor of women. And there are some reasons why that makes sense, and there are some reasons why it's unjust. But if you're a man, you definitely need to go in knowing that, hey, this environment is not necessarily good for me in general.
You said something I want to key in on, and that was something about the amount of child support, inordinate amount of child support, and inordinate amount of alimony. I think you said something like that. Explain
Mhm.
what you mean by that a little bit. Are you admitting that 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 some of the ways that we look at child support in alimony is just unfair?
Oh, 100%. Each state calculates child support a little bit differently, so it's hard to speak about child support, overall. But if you are a man who makes a significant amount of money, you can be paying a significant amount of child support, an amount that really a child doesn't need. If you just have a normal child, I'm not talking about a special needs child or something like that. Does a normal child really need, 3,000, 5,000, 8,000 a month? Now we know that childcare costs a lot of money, and maybe $2,000 in a certain area, 2,500 is reasonable if you take into account child support. Let's say childcare, and you got an 8-month old or something like that. But you look around, and there's so many women getting along with much less than $3,000 a month, or even $2,000 a month. And so child support is definitely an issue. And then spousal support, my goodness, it's even worse. Now there was a time when spousal support made a lot of sense. If you look back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, where women did not really have the opportunity to have a significant career, maybe they were just teachers or something like that, and that didn't pay well at that time. They still don't pay well, but imagine what they paid in the 60s. Or a woman who never worked, who never entered the workforce. She said, hey, we're going to have 4 kids and I'm going to raise them all. And then after 20 years, the husband looks at the wife and says, man, you've had 4 kids, your stomach's all distended, and you're old now. So my secretary's looking way better than you. And then just dumps her. She can't get a job. She's never been in the employment world. Her resume is empty. So how is she going to support herself? Well, if
Right.
you're a husband and you want to trade your wife in for a younger model, and she's raised your kids and you've kept her out of the workforce, maybe you're like, oh, well, I don't want my wife to work. She's going to raise the kids, so you didn't allow her to work in the 60s. Well, maybe you should support her. Maybe you should support her for life. But in 2025, the landscape looks a lot different. There are not a lot of men saying, hey, I don't want my wife to work. Most couples, if we can admit this, most couples can't even afford that these days. And women are doing great. You look at pills, potions, and poison. She's killing it. Strong 6 figures, highly educated. These women are amazing now. And so if I am married to pills, potions, and poisons, and she's a pharmacist, she's just as educated as I am, she's making a killing. Why on earth do I have to pay this lady anything? Beautiful lady and all, but if we're married, then we can combine our resources and we can live a great life. But it's probably the case that if she decides to divorce me, she might not give me certain benefits that I enjoyed during the marriage. Fine. Well, why do I have to give her certain benefits that she enjoyed during the marriage, like maybe access to my income? So alimony in 2025, it's a much rarer case for it. I think a justified case. Although maybe in the 50s, 60s, 40s, 80s, you saw a lot more reason to give it.
Well, Pills is saying that she needs that money, so I don't know
Yeah,
what.
need is a strong word. Need or want, I don't know. Yeah, you making all that pharmacy money, money. You don't need no alimony. You probably go get some. And you don't need it.
So people often push back and talk about, and I haven't looked at this, the amount of persons who actually are required to pay alimony. Something like 7% of divorce cases go to. This is what I've heard. I've never read it.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard anything like that, or do you know the actual stats about people who have to pay alimony, in particular men who have to pay alimony?
I don't know. I would imagine it varies from state to state, and states' records keeping could be different. I do know that more women are paying alimony than ever.
Mm.
Maybe I need to get with Pills, Poison, Poison. Maybe she could pay me some alimony.
I was
What's
thinking the
good for
same
the
thing.
goose, good for the gander. Yeah, I need that alimony. How about that, right? I need. So yeah, and then that kind of comes back to the injustice that befalls the breadwinner. Because a lot of times back in the day, you just assumed that the breadwinner was the man, and if the breadwinner is going to get knocked upside of the head, well, it's going to be the man who's going to get knocked upside of the head. Now it's a lot of women getting knocked upside of the head. They're like, wait a minute, I don't think this alimony thing is right. And you got a lot of women who are asking for prenuptial agreements now to try to even things out because the playing field is not necessarily fair to breadwinners. Just unfortunately, most breadwinners in this country still are men because women select men who are doing better than them typically. Do women choose men who make less money? Yes, but a lot of times it's not for long-term relationships, certainly not for marriage. And even when it does happen in marriage, a lot of those marriages they don't last because a woman will run up against someone who is making more, and now she wants to kind of choose him over you, and now you're kind of left in the dust. So typically women are going to be with men who make at least the same but typically more, and because the legal system does punish breadwinners a lot of the times, men are going to take the brunt of that.
Mm. So because of that, men are reluctant to get married, and I kind of wanted to explore that a little bit. I know that you kind of moved into a different direction on your show, but you've obviously had these conversations with Kevin about men's reluctance to get married because of the potential for financial ruin. Just talk about that a little bit more. I mean, how many, in your professional experience there, how many men are really just don't want to get married once, saying I never want to get married again? I'm assuming you run into that quite a bit.
Yeah, it kind of runs the gamut. You get a lot of men, particularly on social media, that will say, hey, I've been married once and I'm never going to do it again. But you have so many men that'll get married, they'll get divorced, and then they'll get remarried, and they'll get divorced, and then they'll get remarried again. I think Donald Trump was married what, 5, 6, 7 times himself.
Yeah.
A lot of men just want to be married, and I think most men want to be in a long-term relationship. Kevin Samuels used to talk about how in general, men and women are just better together. And I believe that. If you have somebody on your team, it can kind of extend what you're trying to do, somebody that can back you up. It's hard to look at really successful people in this country, or in this world, and find somebody who is who's successful and at the same time did it all by themselves with no help. So if you are a man and you want to live a solitary life, you kind of want to do things on your own, you can absolutely be happy. But it's hard to live that type of lifestyle and be influential, be impactful to a large extent without any type of help. And you can always contract help. You can hire a secretary, or hire a masseuse, or hire a chef, or hire a lot of different types of people. But it's nice to have somebody that's in your corner, that actually cares about you, that's not just there necessarily for a paycheck, and that really supports you and roots for you and backs you up, and can fill in some of the gaps that we all have, not just as men but as human beings. Women's, Lord knows, they have flaws, but men do too. And so if you get a person that can kind of fill in your flaws and help you when you're not necessarily strong all the time, it can really go far for you. So a lot of people say, "Oh, well, lead attorney, you're a divorce attorney. You must be against men. The fact that you must be against marriage," and that's not true. I'm a huge proponent of marriage. but I'm also a huge proponent of divorce. I don't think people should just stay in just destroyed marriages, and men will do that. Women are smart. A lot of men give a lot of women grief for ducking out of these lukewarm marriages, but I think that's very smart because we only go around one time, and there's no use in spending, in my opinion, no use in spending your years of this one life just wallowing in misery. A lot of men don't have any problem with that. They will just suffer in these marriages that are not good at all, and kind of zone out with football, or zone out with video games, or zone out at the strip club. They'll do a lot of different things. But I kind of favor the women on this. Let's just get out and try to find someone who you really should be with, because when you are with a person that you really should be with, you will really kick yourself for spending all those years with the person that you shouldn't. I was married for 10 years, and I count divorcing that lady as one of the top five decisions that I've ever made in my life. It freed me up so much to have so many different experiences, so many new things, and that marriage would have drugged me down. And a lot of people feel ashamed about divorce, or they feel like, oh, I got a failed marriage. I celebrate my divorce. And when I would divorce my clients, when I would help with their cases, I would celebrate them too. It's really a new thing. Now, a lot of times you might represent someone who doesn't want to be divorced. The wife is filing a divorce and he wants to stay in the marriage, and that's always a sad thing. But there are a lot of times when you look at a person and you say, hey, you should not be in this marriage. Let me free you, and let me free your life. A lot of times, unfortunately, we were talking about this with the Titanic and things, men going off to war and dying while the women are staying home chilling. A lot of times men don't value their lives. They certainly don't value their happiness to the extent that I think that they should. And because of that, they will stay in these terrible situations. And I like the way that women value their own lives. I like the way that women value their happiness. And I think that men would be in a much better shape if men did the same. So I love men getting married. I think it's awesome. And I think if they can find somebody that's really in their corner, then they should do that. But I love men getting out of these terrible situations as well.
Very good. In your estimation, what are the let me ask you this in two different ways here. Uh, what are the main reasons that people file for divorce? And if you could follow that up with um, what should people get divorced for? We hear a lot about silly reasons and all that, but first, what are most people filing for divorce for? Is it because of abuse, because people step out? And then what should, in your estimation, what you said getting divorced was one of the best decisions of your life. What should people really get divorced for?
Yeah, that's a great question. Shout out to Marie in the chat. A lot of people in the chat here. Shout out to Kevo. Shout out to I think I saw Guy Incognito in here. Thank you so much, Marie, for the super chat as well. Yeah, people get divorced for all types of reasons. Infidelity is a reason, of course. Having children is a reason, and the complications that can come with having children, the stress of that, the discipline, things of that nature. People get so many divorces for financial reasons as well. Um, a lot of people got divorced over COVID. I mean, people just divorce for all types of reasons, but I would probably say the top three are infidelity/abuse, financial reasons, and then reasons that have to do with kids. But are there reasons why someone might get divorced for a silly reason? Absolutely. And it's because, divorces a lot of times, they're really not that hard to get. And Lord knows it's much easier to get married. But if someone comes into my office and says, hey, I want to get divorced, I'm going to get them their divorce. It's going to be 100%. And a lot of times when you go into different service providers, whether it's a mechanic, or that mechanic you might get in a car accident, the mechanic might say, hey, I can't really do anything about your car. It's got to be totaled out. Well, I want my car fixed. Well, that's not going to happen. Or you take grandma to the hospital and the doctor comes out and says, hey, There's not much we can do for grandma. No, I want her to be well. I want to get out of here. Yeah, she ain't not gonna do well. Some things are kind of up in the air. But if you go to if you go to a divorce attorney and say, "Hey, I want a divorce," there's nothing in the air about that. You're going to get your divorce. And so I think that's a good thing. A lot of men push back. A lot of men say it should be extremely difficult to get a divorce. A lot of men want this repeal of the no fault divorce. A lot of men want to force women to stay with them. If you can imagine, I mean, I don't know if you've ever been with a woman who was not happy in a situation, but imagine having to live with that. And then what
Mm.
does that say about you that you want to live with the unhappy woman? It's insane. There's nothing I think that can ruin you or bring you down like being in the company of someone who is just unhappy, because I truly believe that energy is contagious. And if you don't want to be around me, go. Because I value my energy, I value my life, I value my happiness, my enjoyment. And so we can say that a woman is leaving because it's a silly reason. And objectively, it could be a silly reason. I've never been with a woman who I haven't thought does silly stuff all the time. But if that's how she sees things, then, that's fine. It's cool, whatever. She'll say stuff that's, not necessarily logical. It's more emotional. And that's fine. If I was a woman and my brain was wired that way and I had that, that chemistry, I'd be saying the same stuff. But I don't think it's necessarily right to judge a person if they want to leave. If they want to leave you, well, they're going to leave you now. A lot of times that gets more complicated when you got these kids. And now she says that she don't want to leave you. You're like, well, fine, go. Oh, well, I want to take your son too. Well, now it's now we're getting to more complicated stuff, right? If you want to leave, fine, but what does that have to do with my son? Now the
Mm.
fact that you want to leave, I can only see my son 4 days out of the month,
Right.
Friday
Right.
to Sunday every other weekend. How is that fair? So now we're starting to get to the unfairness of the legal system again. But if you take kids out of it and it's just the man and the woman, do I think that men and women get divorced over silly reasons? Yes. I think they get married for silly reasons too. So if you ask me the second part of your question, well, what are some of the reasons that people should get married, get divorced? Well, I would say, certainly abuse is something. If you're dealing with someone that's abusive, men and women. I did a live stream a month or two ago about the Sha'Carri Richardson situation. She's a United States sprinter, and she was arrested for beating up her boyfriend, assaulting her boyfriend in the TSA area of an airport with cameras all around. Not only did she get arrested, but while she was getting arrested, she started making up false allegations against him. And she was actively trying to get this man arrested, actively trying to get this man's career derailed, actively trying to have this man lose all of his sponsorships. And guess what? They're back together.
Right.
So,
Right.
she's trying to get the cops in your life and you're back together. It's totally abusive on one side, and it's not from what you would typically think, the man to the woman. It's the woman to the man. Men will stay in these abusive relationships. I think they should get out. I think women typically should get out of these abusive relationships too. With women, it's a little bit more complicated because a lot of times you got these kids and you got financial dependency. And so, do I want to take them to the shelter now? My kids are going to be comfortable there. A lot of times when kids get involved, the whole situation becomes more complicated. But at the end of the day, I can say, well, people should get divorced for this reason or that reason. But honestly, I just leave it up to the individual person. If you're not happy, just go. A lot of people, a lot of YouTubers are talking about this situation with Aisha Curry.
Mm.
Talking about, she's married to Steph Curry, one of the premier uh, shooters that the NBA has ever seen. Over $100 million, I would assume. And she's talking about, oh, I never wanted this life. I never wanted these kids. Obama's wife, Michelle, started her own podcast talking about, 10 years she went with Obama. She didn't like him when they were married. Imagine staying with someone that a woman doesn't like you for 10 years and then getting on a podcast and you're exposing your man. Just leave. If you're not happy, if you're not happy, just leave. And I know that goes against a lot of the old school stuff. Oh, women should just stick it out. And, I want a woman to bounce if she's not happy with me. because I got a life too, and my happiness is important too. And so I want you to leave this space so that it's free for somebody who actually does want to be here. So I just think that a lot of times men don't value their lives. And sometimes that's a good thing, because the vast majority of police officers are men. And when there's shootings and everybody's running away from the shootings, who's running towards the shootings? When there's a commercial building on fire, 9/11, who, the women are, sitting in dispatch, and the men are out there on these trucks rushing to these buildings that are going to collapse on them. If you really value your life, you would not be doing that. If you really value your life, you wouldn't be in Afghanistan jumping out of a Black Hawk, trying to kill and capture Osama bin Laden. You wouldn't do it. And so the fact that this nation has come so far in large part is because men are willing to lay down their lives. So that's it's allowed our nation to be the greatest nation on earth. So there is a positive in that, as weirdly as it sounds, that men are willing to be sacrificial lambs. But if we are willing to be sacrificial lambs and everybody knows it, it's kind of weird for us to blame women when women see us as sacrificial lambs. When we're like, oh, well, they throw all the men in prison. Women shouldn't go to prison, incarcerate the men, or believe all women. Men's lives don't matter anyway. Just believe us. Believe what we're saying. It's a fine line. Where do you draw that line if men are so willing to throw their lives and their happiness away for the betterment of society, and then women want to weaponize that, and now we're all pissed off, but we're the same ones dying all the time. It's a complicated issue.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. It's definitely complicated. A lot more people have joined the chat. Salute to Dr. Thunder, who was on my show the other day.
Oh, shout out to Dr. Thunder.
Yeah. Good dude. Marie 2020 with the $20. I appreciate it.
Yeah, she's awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, she needs to come over here a little bit more often, though.
Listen, I've been trying to get Marie to go to dinner with me. She's down here in Atlanta with me. She won't do it. I've been trying to get her to go to dinner with me for 4 years. And
Okay,
she
wow.
will not do it. But if I ever catch her, she know it's on and popping.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to kind of get into a little bit of what we wanted to talk to you about, and that's prenups. And there's a lot of great questions coming up in the chat. I do see them. I'm going to try to get to those a little bit later, but let's get to prenups right now. Are they effective? Can they be thrown out? We hear all the different stories. Give us the real on whether prenups work, etc.
Yeah, there are two types of men who get on social media. I don't even say who get on social media. They're basically two types of men who have strong opinions about divorce. And the type of man that has strong opinions about divorce and is always complaining on social media, it's the man 100% of the time, 100% of the time, who got a divorce with no prenup. And they'll tell you, oh, I got raked over the coals. Oh, she took this. Oh, she took that. Ask them one question. Did you have a prenup? No, but no. She did this and took that. But if you talk to men who have a prenup, they are silent. Men without prenups are so loud. Oh, don't ever get married. Don't ever trust a woman. Talk to a man who got a prenup. And they're like, yeah, hey, Doris, it was great. It was absolutely great. You will never see a stronger difference between two men as opposed to a man with a prenup and a man without. And the man without the prenup is going to be so loud about how marriage is so terrible, divorce is so terrible. And the man with the prenup is quiet. He don't have one thing to say. You will never see all these TikToks about all these men who got divorced with prenups. You will never see it because they're living their lives and they're happy, right? So just that alone should show anybody how powerful prenups are. And I've drafted numerous prenups and they are amazing. They just take the heaviness out of the divorce. They take the risk out. Now, nothing is necessarily 100% ironclad. Our man Tyrese, I think he has the worst prenup case of any case that I've ever seen, ever heard about. He was down here in Atlanta, got divorced by this cute little Samantha girl, and the arbitrator misunderstood his prenup and just made a mistake. And so the judge ruled against Tyrese because the arbitrator made a silly mistake. Now, the judge pointed out that Tyrese's attorney didn't object to the mistake. So now the judge ruled against Tyrese because of that, and Tyrese is on appeal because of the error in his prenup is going to make him pay over $500,000. But I do think that's going to get fixed on appeal. So the one most powerful thing you should do as a man, or really as a woman, if pills, poison, or poison, if Marie, or Marie, I'm gonna leave her out of this because she might be married still. But if you are a woman and you're making over 50,000, I really do think that you should get a prenup or at least consider it. And certainly, if you're a man, the same thing. They're just really necessary. Now, a lot of women will tell other women, hey, you need to get married. You need to get paperwork on this dude. You can't just shack up with him. You're not going to get any of the financial benefits. You can't just date this guy. You need to lock him down, get the paperwork. And I say to those women, they're absolutely right. And then look at the men. Hey, if these women want paperwork, why don't you ask for some paperwork? These women, what's paperwork to a woman? It's a marriage license. That's paper. Fine. Woman, you can have your paper as long as I can have my paper. What's my paperwork? A prenup. So why don't we just do them together? Why is it that women get the paperwork and men don't? It's so crazy. And so I absolutely think that men should get prenups. I know women should too, let's be honest. Especially down here in Atlanta, a lot of women down here are killing it. They're crushing it. I know when I was on the market, I was dating all of them, and these women were Jesus. There's so many women making 115, 175, 203 down here, and you can date them all, but they're serious. They will tell you that they want a prenup. Date a woman who's making 250,000. She's like, hey man, if this goes anywhere, we're getting a prenup. And so the women will come to you, but the men are scared. Men are like, oh, I don't know. If I mention prenup, she's gonna leave and take her ditties with her. So it's like, we can really be scared. These women aren't scared at all. These women have an abundance mindset that, hey, if I bring up prenup and you leave, I can get you replaced by the night. Women are thinking in abundance. Men don't think like that. Men are a lot of times scarcity. It's like, oh well, I really love this one. So if she leaves, then I'm screwed. And because of that, they can put a lot of men behind the 8 ball and they won't ask for the protection that they need. Women are really great at asking for what they need. If a woman wants a prenup, she's going to say, hey, I want a prenup. If a woman wants marriage, she's going to say, hey, I want marriage. Men, we're not good at asking for what we need. Mm-hmm. So much of this is just, it lies in the man's psyche and how we're brought up, and we're supposed to be strong. We're not supposed to complain. We're not supposed to make women upset. We're not supposed to make them angry. Lord, forgive, Lord, please don't let this woman start crying in front of me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, right? We're not supposed to upset these women. And then, it really puts us at a disadvantage because we're not getting our needs met. So do I think men should ask for prenups? No, I think men should demand prenups. Women don't ask. Women say, hey, I want a prenup. It's always the guy asking for a prenup. A man needs to say, hey, I want a prenup. And if you don't want to get to it, okay, well, I gotta go somewhere else, I suppose. But I need this paperwork. Just like women need paperwork, men need paperwork too.
Very good, man. I do have another question about that. But Oasis Drift has put this question a couple of times here. If you marry a foreign woman and get a prenup in another country, will that prenup be honored in America, or will it be as if you didn't have a prenup?
Yeah, this would typically, and let me just say, so we're going to answer questions, but none of this, of course, is legal advice, right? So consult your own attorney in your district. But typically, this is going to depend on where the prenup is from. A lot of times, the United States will have different agreements, like the Hague Convention, different treaties where we will respect other people's documents, other countries' documents. And then some countries are signatory to those agreements, to those treaties, and then some countries are not. And so if you have some paperwork, let's say from North Korea. Like, we're not in good relations with North Korea, and probably nothing is going to be respected from there. But in general, just to be safe, I would say that if you are going to get divorced in this country, you need a prenup that is drafted and signed in this country. So that's how you should do it. It doesn't matter where you get married. You can get married in the Philippines, you can get married in Colombia, in Brazil, in the DR. If you married in the DR, Lord bless you. You have a real wife on your hands. But no matter where you get married, it doesn't matter. It really matters where you get divorced. And if you're going to get divorced in this country, you should have a prenup drafted in this country. And even better, if you're going to get divorced in a particular state, it's nice to have that prenup from that state. So if you're going to get divorced in New York, it's good to have a prenup that's drafted in New York. You're going to get divorced in Atlanta, it's good to have a prenup that's drafted in Georgia. So that's the specificity that would be optimal.
One of my frustrations is, you get a contract, which would be a prenup, to negate the original contract, which is the marriage. So, I mean, why not just not do it at all? I just, to me, and this is what I want to ask you about. A lot of people doing commitment ceremonies, spiritual ceremonies in lieu of the contract with the state. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Typically, men would say what you're saying, and they would say, man, typically men don't really have a strong bias one way or the other. A man would like to be in a long-term relationship with a woman generally, but doesn't really care if there's marriage or not. If a woman says, hey, I don't want to be married, I love you and I want to live with you for the rest of my life, but I don't want to be married, most men will be like, bet, I don't care either way. I just want you here, baby. It's usually the women that will press the marriage issue, and there are reasons for that. Women are more protected when there's a marriage. It could be the case that a woman could shack up with a dude for 15, 20 years. During that time, she's working. Let's say I'm with pills, potions, and poison. She's making all this money. Let's say she's making 200,000. She's helping out with the bills, right? She's helping out indirectly with the mortgage. Even if I'm paying the mortgage, her money's coming in, so it's freeing me up to not pay something else, right? And we could be in a relationship for 15 years. But if I just went and bought the house and her name's not on it, if I die, or if I decide I don't like her on some Tuesday and kick her out or something like that, she's on the street. She has no claim to that house if her name isn't on it. Marriage solves that. And marriage, once you get married, typically anything that's acquired after the marriage date becomes both parties, regardless of whether someone's name is on it or not. So getting married does provide a lot of protection towards women, and that's why most women will insist on a marriage. When you start doing things like these spiritual marriages or ceremonial marriages, which men will do, men will be married, not be married, spiritual marriage, ceremonial marriage, men don't really care. But men need to understand that a lot of times these options are not going to be desirable for women. They're not going to be acceptable to women because they don't afford the women the protection that they would get from the state. They don't click in these laws that say, okay, if we are married and then you buy a house because your credit is good and you got the income, so the house is going to be in your name. Even though it's in your name, now that we're married, I have 50% ownership of it. Whereas if we were just dating, if we did the ceremonial wedding, the spiritual wedding, which is not a marriage under the law, I still don't have those protections. So I'm not a big fan of these ceremonial weddings. I think it's men trying to have their cake and eat it too. If men can find a woman who will accept that, a woman dumb enough to play along, I say, great, do it. I love it. Go, bro. All right, do your thing. Go down to Hawaii or whatever, have your ceremonial marriage. There is a little bit of risk in that. If certain states might view that as a step towards kind of common law marriage. That even though the ceremony isn't legal, if you're holding yourself out to be husband and she just said that, even if if you're holding yourself out to be husband and wife, you're wearing a ring and she goes and changes her last name to your last name. I think in Texas, for example, you don't even need a certain amount of time period. It could be the case that you have your ceremonial wedding, you go back to from your honeymoon, you're in Texas for 4 weeks, and Texas considers you married because you are taking all these steps to show the public that you're married. Texas is gonna say, okay, well, you're married now, even though you only did this ceremonial wedding, this spiritual wedding. So men need to be very careful about that. I don't like it if that's what men need to do to try to keep their woman around without risking, their stuff, then I think that's fine. I suppose the better way is to get married with a prenup. That's the way to do it. Not try to do all these backwood type of things. Oh, we're just gonna, do a spiritual wedding, whatever the hell that is, because you could still get caught up in some of these states with common law. And even if you don't, it doesn't make a lot of sense from the woman's point of view. So I don't know how she's going to go for it. So
Mm.
that's kind of what I think about it.
Uh, let's see. I want to get these in order here. So men with prenups, they get married again. They're confident to get married again if they have a prenup. They got divorced once, I would assume, and then they get married again. She said again. But
Yeah, I've had clients where the husband will come in and I'll divorce him, and then he'll go back and get married, and he'll come in and I'll divorce him. But guess what? His wife that I'm divorcing is the same wife from the first one. Like he married this woman, divorced her, and then married her again, and then divorced her and married her again. I have divorced guys. I've divorced a few guys from the same woman multiple times. And then of course a lot of times men will get married and then get divorced and marry someone different and maybe get divorced or not. But this question really underscores the importance of a prenup, because if you get married with a prenup, especially with no kids, a divorce is just a breakup. It's just a breakup. Hey, we broke up, man. There's no fighting. There's no nothing, no legal fighting at least. Attorney's fees aren't crushing or anything. Everything's spelled out in the prenup. So why would I fear getting married if I've got a prenup? And if I get divorced with a prenup, I'm never scared of a marriage. This question is kind of like, oh, well, men who got a prenup, they got divorced and they remarried. Yeah, they remarried because they're not scared of marriage. Why aren't they scared of marriage? Because they got the prenup. The prenups make marriages so much easier to get into and so much easier to exit. And you're not scared of them. You're just not. I would never be scared to get married ever. At least
we talked
financially.
about we talked about Tyrese. How many of them fail though? Is there a percentage that we look at? I mean, it wasn't done correctly, or there was a mistake made, or the woman didn't have understanding, whatever else could make it fail. How often do these? Because that's what we hear a lot of times. At least that's what I hear, is that prenups are not ironclad.
I don't think any prenup fails that is drafted correctly, where there's been a full disclosure of all the incomes, where uh, the prenup is presented 6 months before the wedding, and where the prenup isn't, um, let's say, punitive, where it's more or less kind of fair. I don't think any of those fail. Now, it could be the case that, well, let me just say, number one, there's not really statistics that keep records on how many prenups fail. And let me also say that prenups fail all the time if they violate one of those four rules. They'll fail 100% of the time. You say, well, how many prenups fail? 100%? 100% of the prenups fail if they violate one of those four rules. But typically speaking, if you've got a prenup that follows those four rules, it's just going to hold up. It just is. It could be the case where Tyrese, where a judge makes a mistake, but even if the judge makes a mistake, guess what there is? There's appellate courts to fix that mistake. So, it might fail at the trial court level, but then just do the appeal. Now the appeal is going to cost you some money, and it's going to take time. So, it's a hassle, but the error is going to get corrected.
Very good. What
Hmm.
legal arrangements are available for people who choose not to marry but choose to have children with their partner? Are there baby nups?
Yeah,
Baby
that's a
nups.
great question. Yeah, there are no baby nups. All men would love baby nups. They'd probably be too scared to ask for them. But that would be amazing. Now, that's if there's one bad thing about prenups, it's this. And high vibe is highlighting it. The one bad thing about prenups is that it can't include children. So you can't say in the prenup, oh, by the way, if we have 3 kids, I'm only paying $50 a month in child support. You can't do that. Or you can't say in the prenup, hey, if I catch you cheating, then I'm going to divorce you and then I get full custody of the kids and you can never see the kids again. Because you shouldn't be a whore. You can't put that in there to disincentive the woman from cheating on you. So that's the problem with prenups. They really don't encompass that. And why is that? Because at the end of the day, children are even though we view a lot of times children as property, like that's my child and mine, really children are separate human beings. And so you really can't contract away their rights. Children have a right to child support that's independent of what the mom or the dad wants to pay. And so a judge always wants to kind of carve the children out and say, hey, when it comes to children, I'm going to make the decisions, what's best, what's in the best interest of the child. I'm going to be the one signing off on that. You guys can sign off on the debt, on the visa. You guys can do whatever you want about the house. You guys can do whatever you want about the Toyota. I don't care. Put all that stuff in the prenup. When it comes to human beings, when it comes to children, they're not property. So someone independent needs to be watching over their rights. And so the judge kind of takes that responsibility. So you're really not able to put these children in these prenups like you would want. But a baby nut would be awesome. So shout out to Harvard. That would be really good.
Another question here. Can you explain postnups?
Yeah. Postnups are exactly the same as prenups. It's just that the postnuptial agreement, that's what a postnup is, stands for postnuptial agreement. Hey, shout out to Aaron. A postnuptial agreement is just an agreement that's signed postnuptial or after the nuptial. So post means after, and then pre means prior or before. So a prenuptial agreement is an agreement that's signed prenuptial or before the nuptials, before the marriage. Postnuptial agreement is just an agreement that's signed post the nuptials or post the marriage. But so many times the agreements look almost identical. It's just, was the agreement signed before the wedding date or after? Now it's much more difficult to get a postnup signed than it is a prenuptial, because if a woman doesn't sign the prenuptial, I can always be like, all right, then, we're not going to get married. And then she's like, oh, she got to make a decision. But if I come to her 5 years after we're married and be like, hey, you need to sign this postnuptial, she might say no. And then what are you going to do? You got no leverage. So that's the bad thing about a postnuptial, is that you don't have the leverage that you have in the prenuptial. That's the bad thing.
Does the prenup help protect assets accumulated during the marriage?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's such a great question. Prenups are amazing. And they can say so much. They can say, hey, during the marriage, if let's say a very common language in the prenup says whatever we get in the marriage is separate property unless we specifically make it joint. So if you get something, if you buy something during this 30-year marriage, that's yours. And if I buy something during this 30-year marriage, 40-year marriage, however long it is, that's mine. And it'll always be mine. And if I buy a house, it's mine. And if I sell that house for a profit, that profit is mine, and all the money that I get from the sale is mine. And then if I take all that money and buy a new house, then that new house is mine. And if that house appreciates in value and appreciates in equity, then the equity is mine. And if I cash out some of that equity and buy some stocks, then those stocks are mine. Like, it's all mine. And wait, but whatever you buy, That's yours. If you're married to a pills, potions, and poison, making all this money, whatever she buys is hers. And then if we buy a house together and we want it to be together, we want it to be a joint, then we can just put both our names on it and it'll be joint. So it can absolutely protect anything, any assets that you buy. Now you take a look at pills, potions, and poison. She one of these strong black women, right? Educated. Well, a lot of these educated women, what do they have? Especially down here in Atlanta, they got a gang of student loan debt. Student loan debt out the out the wazoo. And you never wanted to be where, even though this lady making 115,000, she got $200,000 worth of student loans. So the prenup can say any debts during the marriage, they're yours. If they're your debts, my debts are mine. So many men, we have no idea what's on these women's credit cards, what's on the Victoria's Secret, what's on, all these women, what is it, the Ultra or whatever, makeup store or whatever. We don't know the Sephora. We don't know how much is on these cards. A lot of husbands would be shocked if they knew how much credit card debt, consumer debt that women have. But if they got that credit card debt during the marriage without a prenup, then the husband owns half of that debt. Husband ain't never stepped into Sephora, but now there's a $3,000 Sephora bill and a $1,500 is his. Why? Why don't we just say, if she wants to go to Sephora, if she wants to go to Ultra, that's hers. And if I want to go to Home Depot, that's mine, right?
That's exactly what I said. You got to get a contract and negate the contract. Why is this an issue? Just separate. It should be, for me, it should be standard from the marriage. Your stuff is your stuff. My stuff is my stuff, unless we want to put it joint. That should be the standard, just like 50-50 custody should be the standard for me. I think that should be the standard. We have to get a contract to negate the original contract. Well, the original contract is ridiculous to me. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say it necessarily negates it, because it changes it. It definitely modifies it. And the original contract is the marriage. So,
right.
Yeah, so there are countries that where the default is separate property. I think in Mexico, for example, if you get married, it's bienes separados. Everybody's stuff is their stuff, and then if you want to combine it, then you can combine it. But the default is what's mine is mine, and yours is yours. And I would agree that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. But it's such an easy fix. That's the one thing I've noticed about guys, and I don't see this as much at all with women, but especially with guys who are making money. They're cheap as hell. And they will not want to spend $3,000, $3,500 just to get an amazing prenup. And then they'll lose, $400,000 in the divorce when you count in the 401ks and the pension, the stocks, and the home equity. They didn't want to spend $3,000, and turned out they spent $400,000. I mean, I, as a man, am never going to complain about a $3,000 expense that can save my entire life work. I'll never complain about it. I won't complain when I go to Fogo down here, my favorite restaurant down here, and the bill is $120. I chose to eat there. I'll pay the $120. I don't have a problem with that. Go to Capitol Grill, pay the $230. I'll pay it. But I'm just not going to complain about certain bills. And if I decide to get married and want to spend the rest of my life with one person, and the cost is $3,000, I'll pay it. I mean, how much is the wedding going to cost? How much is the ring going to cost? How much is the hotels, the honeymoons? How much is that going to cost? Just throw the $3,000 there and hit it. I don't understand why it's so difficult. Just pay it and save yourself. So I think a lot of men need to be a lot stronger. They need to be a lot stronger in terms of, insisting on these things with women. But then they also need to be a lot stronger mentally and say, hey, man, $3,500 is nothing. $5,000 is nothing to ensure that I have a great prenup. It's nothing.
You can't write about not sleeping around in your prenup. I thought you could put that in there.
Well, I mean, you can say it in there. But you just can't, what are the punishments going to be? That's where it starts to get, issue, right? You can say, hey, if we get divorced, you get 50% of everything. But if we get divorced because of infidelity, then maybe you only get 25%, or maybe you don't get anything. You can tailor it to certain things. I know, for example, in Georgia, a woman might be entitled to alimony, but she loses the right to alimony if she commits infidelity, if she commits adultery. She loses it. It's a bar. So you can make certain things like that in the prenup.
Mm.
Hmm. Oh, but she says when it comes to custody, right? When it comes to custody, when it comes to children, no. Women, y'all can sleep whoever y'all want. That's not necessarily going to affect y'all getting custody. So that's absolutely true.
Let's see. A couple more questions here. Um, Prenups all the way. Prenups are smart.
Yes. Yes. You guys know all about it.
Does a trust protect your assets if you decide to live with your partner instead of marriage?
Yes, but if you are living with your partner and not married, then that partner typically doesn't have access to your assets anyway. Now, it can get a little bit sticky, in terms of what if both of y'all bought the couch together or something like that. It's better, instead of trust, I would say, just to have a cohabitation agreement. A cohabitation agreement is kind of like a prenup for non-married people. So we say, hey, whatever we buy is going to be separate. So if I put the couch on my credit card, then it's going to be mine. If we get a house, this is what's going to happen to the house. So I wouldn't necessarily go straight to the trust. I would probably go to a cohabitation agreement before I start going to trust, because trust can be complicated. A lot of the times they can have their own separate tax implications. They have their own tax filing obligations. A lot of trust, they have to file taxes every year for themselves, so that implicates higher attorney's fees, but accountant fees. So they can get complicated real quick. So I would try not to go straight to the trust if I could do something a little bit more easy.
Mm.
But yeah, trust can be very helpful. So that's a great point.
Is there a cap on child support? It's a good question from Oasis Drift. Is there a cap on child support? Which states are the least abusive about it? I'm not against supporting kids, but the kids, they don't eat gold.
Yeah, I don't know which states are the least abusive. I know the states that are most abusive are California and New York. I know New York, for example, you have to pay for the children until they're like 21 years old. I think in Georgia it's 18 unless the kids are still in high school. So that's 3 more extra years of child support in New York. And then in California, they're just so liberal and so used to having so many people out there with money. They will absolutely knock you over the head with child support. Now, child support is calculated differently in every state. So I don't know what all the caps are in all the states. There's certainly an amount that's given. But again, states calculate it differently. I know in Georgia, for example, if you're, let's say, a Tyrese, pretty much the attorneys were kind of making up the child support, because let's say you're making $3 million a year, our calculator wouldn't go up that high. Our calculator would say, okay, the limit is $3,000 a month, let's say. And then if you make $3 million a year, everybody knows that the calculator reached its limit. So now you got to add on some extra thousands per month. Well, how much do you add on? It's just a made up number. So is your child support going to be 5,000, 8,000, 12,000 a month? We attorneys were just making it up. So, it's just the limit in Georgia is kind of what's reasonable if you make over a certain amount. But that reasonable number is just something that the attorneys kind of agree to, or the judge just decides on his own. Judge goes, well, I think you should pay $9,500 a month. Where'd you get that from? Well, I just made it up. I was like, crazy. A judge is deciding how much support you're going to give to your own children. It's insane. I don't know. I'm so pro marriage, but I'm much less in favor of men having kids. And I know I know that's something you'll never hear anybody say. You'll never hear anybody say it, but I am not. And I need to say also that I don't have any kids, right? So maybe I'm biased, but men are scared about the wrong things. from what I've seen, men don't need to be scared about this marriage because there's a protection. There's no protection for these kids. And I've just seen so many men's lives devastated by having these kids, especially if they really love them and the kids are taken away from them. The kids are turned against them, parental alienation. It's so much riskier to have kids than it is to get married. Men shouldn't bat an eye to get married, but having a kid, it's so
So,
much
I mean,
riskier.
that's interesting there that you say that. And from your time doing what you were doing, I mean, what would you do to fix that? How would you try to fix that? Or is it just it can't be fixed in the US?
It can't be fixed. And because let men tell it, listen, I'll be honest, I would have 30 kids if I didn't pay any child support. I have
Right.
kids all over this nation. Hey, Lead, I'm your son. Hey, son, what's your name? I'd have all the kids. It doesn't faze me. But now I'm supposed to pay thousands of dollars for each one, and it's for years. That's the problem. Minimum 18 years. There's nothing, it's just men, we will cry about the wrong things. We're all worried about this marriage stuff. Marriage stuff I can get out of in a heartbeat. Marriage is easy. There's no getting out of those 18 years. There's no prenup that's gonna help with that. No baby nup, as what is it, High Vibe was talking
High
about.
vibe,
Yeah,
yeah.
your men you're worried about the wrong thing. Now, being a father is just so amazing to so many men. So many men, it's really one of the highlights of their entire life. I don't want to come out here and say men shouldn't have kids because that would degrade millions and millions of men's lives. So many men would be so much less if they didn't have their kids. So I want to acknowledge that. That's why I don't bang that drum too hard, because so many men should have kids. Men who have kids should just know how risky it is. And a lot of times men are going to run that risk, and it's going to be the best risk that they've ever run in their entire lives. And so I respect it. But I don't want to hear men crying about the risk of marriage when these 18-year-old kids are walking around. It just doesn't make sense to me. I just say it like that.
So we had here in Connecticut, it was the age was actually 21. I haven't looked at the law in a long time. You had to pay till you're 21, but they only enforced it until age 18, unless you were married and then got it in your part of your divorce decree that you had to pay for college education and things like that. And there was a case, my time in law enforcement, right? So we were like threatened. This lady was like threatening to have her husband arrested. Excuse me. Yeah, have her husband arrested because the kid came back from college who was like 21 years old, and he wanted to put him out because he wasn't following the rules. So he's home from college, and the charge was going to be like risk of injury to a minor. We're like, he's 21 years old.
So minor. That's crazy.
It was so bizarre, but so that's how we started looking into this. Can we do this? What's up with this? It was a bizarre case. 21 years old and charged with risk of injury to a minor who's 21. Okay.
Yeah, some of the stuff doesn't make sense at all. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. You good for time?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. High Vibe's got another good question here. Does every state have a cohabitation agreement? We don't have common law in Connecticut, so I don't know. I know that's a thing around the country, but we don't have that. Do you know about how that works?
I would hesitate. I just don't know the laws in every state, so I'm not sure. That's a great question, but I'm not sure.
Right, gotcha. Let me see if there's any good questions here.
And everybody hit the like button if you can. I don't even know.
Yeah, y'all hit the like button.
Yeah, I've already hit it myself.
Listen, I forgot to hit the like button on my own stuff too. I'm like, man, I didn't hit this like button. Should men have here's a good question from my man. Should men have a choice of giving up custody in exchange for not paying child support because men don't have a say in the woman has a baby or not? Right. This is whole they can, delete the baby, but can they delete the child? What are your thoughts about that?
No, just again, because they're human beings. I would go the opposite. I would say that men should either have a choice of getting 50-50 custody or paying child support. That's what I would say. Now, men, if we're having sex, then we know that's a possibility. All right, so we're gonna say, "Oh, the women can get an abortion." Yeah, that's true, but you can also take steps, right? So I would say this: either a man can have 50-50 custody with no child support. If paying child support is such a big thing, then don't pay it and just have 50% custody of your kid that you made. You made half of the kid, so you pay half of the support. I don't know how that's not fair. That seems fair to me. If you make half of the kid, you pay half of the support, but you pay the support when the kid is with you, so you pay zero child support. Now, there are a lot of men who are not going to be able to do that. A lot of men who are in the military in Afghanistan, "Oh, I can't take the kid over here." Okay, well, now you're in child support land. Or I'm a pilot and I got to go to Sydney. I got to go to Bangkok. I got to fly to Laos. Well, okay. Well, you were a pilot when you made that kid, so now you're on child support. Or, hey, man, I'm just a rolling stone. I don't even want to see this kid. What did that basketball player, who was it? Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards, before that kid was born, wrote that lady a check for $1 million. I don't never want to see this kid. And I don't have a problem with that. Some men are not supposed to be good fathers, and I would never want a child around a father who does not want to be a father, because that's a very dangerous situation for a child. So if a man just wants to cut a lady a check and be gone in the wind, hey, the woman shouldn't have laid down with that man, right? So that's how I view it. I do think that, just from my practice, I represented so many men that if you gave that man the chance to just sign a piece of paper and never have to pay child support, that man, he couldn't find that pen fast enough. And so where does that leave us? I think that would make it so where even more women are turning to the state for support. And then when the state needs to pay all these women support for men that y'all made, where is the state going to get the money from? From me, from you. And so now we're paying. You're going to tell me that you're going to raise my taxes to pay for children that I didn't even create. I ain't going to let you off the hook that easy. You pay for your own kids. Either you spend time with them and don't pay a dime to the mother, or you don't see them, you say forget them, and then you pay that mother her money. But don't look to the taxpayers to pick up your slack. That's how I feel about it.
What's your thoughts about those who try to trap the men? Right, they run to the bathroom to get the condom, or it's deposit in their mouth. All kind of, I don't want to get too crazy, but you know what I'm saying. What are your thoughts about that? And because in my estimation, the men took protections or steps to not be in the situation, and the ladies will try to trick them that way.
Yeah, you can get trapped, and I definitely think there's a line that there should be some criminal penalties to it. Women who are doing all of this paternity fraud when they know the man isn't the father, and then saying that he is to get the money. I think a lot of that should cross the line into some criminality. But most women aren't stealing condoms, right? So it's just like, I don't know what to do about that. But there's definitely a line when women start committing fraud. So I'm absolutely, I agree with that.
What are your thoughts about the DNA testing of birth, and the whole fraud thing? It's not theirs, or the whole Maury Povich phenomenon. You're not the father. You got 12 different other people to test.
Yeah, I wish it wasn't necessary. I wish men would kind of, sack up and just demand a test and not have to have the taxpayers pay for it. We're not make it government sponsored. But most men are going to chicken out, and they're going to be too afraid to ask for the DNA test. And if they don't, then they're going to get screwed. So I do think that let's just go ahead and test all kids, because most men are not going to be brave enough to ask for the kid, ask for the DNA. I think even married men should ask for DNA tests. But do that to your wife. When it's on your third kid, hey, let me see the DNA test. Your wife's going to flip her shit. So a lot of men need to be protected from their own wives. And so this automatic DNA paternity testing really just serves to protect men and their fragility and asking for these things, because they're just not going to do it. Now there are some cases where men don't have access to ask for it, or the woman disappeared or something like that. In those cases it also makes sense, but I would just wish that it wasn't necessary, but it just seems like so many times it is necessary.
Yeah, and I've seen some cases. There was a one I know it's that it happened here in the U.S., but there was a case in China where like the guy had like 5 kids and none of them were his, and they were married. So
Yeah.
again, the whole contract, which is it's automatic. If you have a child in wedlock, it's automatically yours, and now you got to fight hard to get out of that DNA, through DNA, and the state is reluctant to do that because of the financial incentives, as you mentioned. Somebody else has to pay for this kid. So,
Yeah, but the man can do it. That's the thing. Just men are scared to do it. That's what kind of bugs me.
mm,
Men would rather make, men, especially conservative men, they're always like, oh, well, less government, less government. But hey, I'm scared to ask my girlfriend for a DNA test. So now I want more government. Now I want more laws. Now I want laws to make it so that every birth is tested, so that I don't have to sack up and be a man and demand for this DNA test. Right.
mm,
Oh, I don't want to offend my wife, so I wish it was automatic so that I can say, hey, it's not me, baby. I love you, but it's just the state that's. I wish men would kind of be more men. But hey, if they can't, then let's just make it mandatory.
I got you. I got you. A lot of other people are also thinking it should be mandatory as well. Lead, what else you got coming up? I mean, what other things are going on in your life there?
Yeah,
Actually, there
yeah,
was hold on before you get to that question here.
yeah,
There was a question about you mostly did family law, but Yoli asked a question um, about how does an attorney deal with um, your client is guilty or something like that. I always wonder how attorneys fight for clients who are guilty. Let's say gruesome murder. How does the conscience allow it? I know about innocence and proven guilty, but if there's evidence, et cetera, how does a attorney deal with those types of conundrums?
yeah. We deal with them, and then we go to sleep very easily at night. We don't care at all. Well, we don't really care at all, because at the end of the day, it's not what you did; it's what they can prove. And
Mm,
so, attorneys, we're in the proving arena. And so that's all we're doing. We are fighting against them being able to prove it. We don't care whether they did it or not. Now, there are people who do care. And you know what those people are not? They are not criminal defense attorneys. There are a lot of attorneys who are like, hey, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So I can't represent guilty people.
mm,
And so those attorneys, they do other things. But
mm,
there are attorneys who represent, all criminal defense attorneys, and we don't care. I've handled so many, especially in the beginning of my career, handled a ton of criminal defense cases, and we don't care at all. And even if your client is guilty, it doesn't necessarily mean that client should get the maximum penalty. And so what a
mm,
lot of times attorneys are doing is saying, okay, they've got evidence showing that my client is guilty. Well, let's see if all that evidence is strong. And even if it is, let's talk about sentencing. Maybe they want 20 years. What if I can get my guy 9 years? That's a win. That's a win. People talk about the Puffy Combs situation. Puffy was basically looking at life with all his RICO. What did he end
mm,
up getting? 4 years. How many years did he serve already in jail? One. So now he's got 3 years. Do some type of government program, some type of government, good behavior. Make some license plate. So get 10 years, 10 months knocked down off his sentence. So you started with 4 years. He's been incarcerated 1 year. So now you're three. Do some type of government program in there and get 10 months knocked off. So now you're two. Plus, Puffy he was facing life basically, and now he's only got 2 years. That's a huge, huge benefit to Puffy. You don't think his attorneys knew that Puffy was kicking this girl all up and down the hallway? His attorneys knew what the hell Puffy was doing. Everybody in the nation knew Puffy was guilty of something. But his
right.
attorneys stepped in when the prosecutors were trying to give this man basically life in prison. His criminal defense attorney stepped in and got him 2 years. You gotta love it. You know, and then the criminal defense attorneys, I'm sure they're laughing all the way to the bank. Because I know they made millions, but you know, they were worth it. So we don't care about that at all. Great question.
Yeah. Appreciate that, Aoli. And to everyone else, High Vibe is saying attorneys are concerned about recidivism. That's probably a win for them too, right? This is more money.
That's more money. Please go out and keep raping. It's like, Jesus, we don't care at all. I got a mortgage.
Please go out here and do it.
Yes.
Oh man! All right, brother. What else you got coming up, man? You're still building up your network.
A new channel because my channel now is all over the place, doing body cam stuff, some political stuff. But I do want to start a channel that's going to focus specifically on this family law stuff, and I want to get out the content that you are getting out. It's just so important for men. So, you know, I've been saying I'm going to start that channel for months, but this year's kind of been kind of a down year. So. But hopefully soon I'm gonna start it up, so I'll be making some content on that, and then I just keep taking it day to day. That's kind of what I do.
Good. Well, good for you, man. I too have another channel. This is where I talk about the police stuff. I want to get into more politics, but yeah, so that's my wheelhouse there. So you guys can go check that out, Dr. L's Breakdown. Obviously here, and my friend and I, we do a faith and justice podcast where he comes from a religious perspective. I come from the criminal justice background. We fight and argue about stuff. So we have a lot of laughs over there. So it's good. So that's what I got going on. So thank you so much, Lead. I really, really appreciate you coming on to the show, man. It was really a great time. I think you gave out some great information, and maybe some guys will reconsider marriage now because of, just get a prenup, spend the $2,000-$3,000, whatever it is, in order to get it, and maybe that will put their minds at ease. You did say some things to me that really kind of made me think twice about it. So we shall see.
100%. I think whenever you talk to someone who's been in a particular field a long time, they will present some arguments or things in a light that most people haven't heard. So it's very easy to see content creators get up here and just say, oh, well, don't get married. But once you deal with the marriage and divorce system for 20, 25 years, you will start to have very nuanced understandings about the system. And you'll say things that will kind of make people say, oh, well, I never really thought of it that way. And so that's kind of the value that I want to bring just to YouTube. My little 2 cents is to give someone kind of an insider's peek into how this system really works, the things that you should not be concerned about, which people are, and then some of the things that you should be very concerned about, which people apparently aren't. So you start seeing, the real behind the scenes stuff. So yeah, I think it's interesting, and I hope the audience members kind of, I hope I gave 1 or 2 things to kind of contemplate. So, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, Anthony Hodges, my man, says, yes, men need to stop being scared of female tears and stand up for what's best for them. Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, that's that's and you've seen that a lot. This guy
I haven't heard about Chaos Rain in years. So they got the Chaos Rain. Shout out to Chaos
Rain. Yeah, he's still out there. Yeah.
He's still out there.
Well, I mean, I didn't mean it like that. I mean, he's still doing his thing. He's still got his channel. That's what I meant.
I got you.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's pretty much it. Everybody else is saying thank you. Thank you to everyone. Let me see here. A couple of things here. Marie Love obviously put that $20 up. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Aaron.
Aaron Laura says, this is a great discussion, gentlemen. Thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah,
and High Vibe, who's also awesome, gifted 5 podcast memberships. I try to put out some content just for them, so I appreciate her doing that.
Awesome. Salute High
Vibe. What a miss. Said, hold off on the ribs, get the prenup.
100%.
Hold off on the rims. Oh man. All right, brother, man. I thank you for coming on, man. Great show. We look forward to your other channel when you put that out. I really appreciate it. And to everyone else, thank you guys for joining us for lunchtime. I appreciate it. You guys take care of yourselves. I'll hit you guys again. Take care. Much love and peace.